everyone, this is Riccardo Masini and welcome to WLOG. This is vlog. This vlog is about Napoleon at Waterloo, the second edition. The second edition, not of Napoleon at Waterloo, no, of the Sabin, Professor Phil Sabin's variants to Napoleon at Waterloo. If you remember, what is the story? The story is, okay, I published my first video about the Sabin's variants to Napoleon at Waterloo, and I said, okay, now I find a very nice set of variations like that, blah blah blah. Just as I published that first video, I got a message here on YouTube and also on BGG by Professor Sabin himself that said, "Hi Riccardo, nice video. You made some mistakes here and there, okay, but probably you don't know that 3 days ago I published a second set of variants." And then I said, oh my god, I have to remake the entire video. But then I said, no, why should I? Maybe I can make a mini series of video about this and study the evolution of those variations and study how the historical narration changes from one edition to the other, why Professor Sabin has made those variations, and this will be great, highly interesting. And here we have the episode 2, and here we are. Okay, the chronological order of the things is that Professor Sabin published the first edition of his variants, then Professor Esdaile, Charles Esdaile, published another set of variations, a bit more elaborated, and then Sabin said, how can I reach the same level of historical accuracy of Esdaile while maintaining the simple approach of my first edition of the variations, maybe even better than Esdaile. And so a debate has happened because two great historical professors, these great historians and wargamers, and here we have the second edition of the variations. Fantastic stuff. As players are in the middle and we enjoy the advantages of the entire situation. So here we are. Now we will get on the table, we will study those variations, and this file is available on BGG. Of course, I will put you every link, and the changes between the two editions of the variations are reported in red, so they're very easy to read, in red color. And you will have all the links, also the links to my first video that I recommend you to see, because it really gives you the entire evolution, the entire situation. And now let's see that on the table. Once again, those variations all use the original components of the game. You will see, as I said in the first video, you see a different set of counters because I remade them because I didn't like them graphically, but they are the same counters that you will find in all the editions of the game, also in print-to-play editions. It is Napoleon at Waterloo with the same components, and you will see that on the table. Let's see how the second edition of variations work on the gaming table. As we did in our first video about the first edition of Sabin's variations, Sabin's rules, we will follow Professor Sabin's leaflet and his file that is available on BGG, and of course I will leave you the link in the description. Also very interesting, very important thing, all the modifications between the two editions of the variants are highlighted in red color, so that you can easily compare them. And the first two blocks that we will study, there are setups and also turn sequence. Here are identified, I believe, all the terminology of the old rule set for Napoleon at Waterloo, equipment and basic procedure. And as you can see, it is quite extensive. The modifications in the second edition of Professor Sabin's variants. In general, let's begin with the setup. Okay, setup. In general, the British, the Anglo-Dutch forces are more concentrated here in the center. There are no forces beyond on this point. Why? Because those forces are assumed to be covering this flank, and actually the French player cannot move on those four axes, and also has severe limitations in moving into La and Papelotto. Why? Because there are other troops here that have been removed from the original setup. They're still there, you just don't see them for historical purposes. So, and in general, we see a shift towards west of Wellington's deployment, which is more in line with what historical happened. You see literally the thin red line here, a first line of troops, and then a second more scattered line behind of reserves. So in general, it is more concentrated on in the center. Also, the detachment, other big change, detachment in Huguemont is much stronger, and this is actually should be a free. It is counted as a free strength unit because it is an absorption of two different formations. They are condensed in this one. Also, the French, there have been some changes. One is just an order of battle changes between two artillery units, just the denomination of these units, but in general also it is more concentrated on the center. We have lost the cavalry here that is deployed a bit more towards the center. The other great variation, and it is very, very important, is that turns. Now you disregard the time here. Why? Because those turns are no longer representative of 60 minutes or 1 hour real time, but they are representative of 90 minutes, 1 hour and a half. This because Sabin made this change because this reflected much better the movements and all the maneuvers around the battlefield, and also because during playtest it was seen that in 6 turns the game usually was resolved. So those 4 last turns are not used. You just end on the 6th turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it. And also the reinforcement flow has been changed somewhat. We will see that later. The Prussian reinforcements. In general, we have a more condensed setup with a bit more restrictions in movement that by Professor Sabin should actually better reflect the historical reality of the battle. Also, the movement phase, the movement module, has been thoroughly modified by Professor Sabin. The main change is that French units cannot move on these, on this band of 4 axes from the east edge. Why? Because there are Anglo-Dutch coalition forces here preventing that maneuver. Also, another thing, they cannot get into La and Papelotto. They can attack there, but there are still other allied troops that prevent them from just moving into La and Papelotto. Another thing, there are also restrictions because there are some units that have to be released so that they cannot move before a certain turn. You would see that in the variations. Most of all, the Imperial Guard cannot go on and immediately move around on the battlefield. This really reflects the fact that there were general orders given in the morning of the battle, and so before changing those orders, you had to wait. There was a certain inertia, and so it was not so easy to change the overall battle plan. Other important stuff, units moving, let's see, okay, like this. Moving into enemy cavalry zone control, paying 1 more movement point before, because there is a certain interdiction. On the contrary, the disengagement this was something I got wrong in my first video. Cavalry units can disengage from enemy units. They can disengage. They cannot just go around and move wherever they want. They can disengage just 1x, but they can also do it in the variant. They can also do it when addition to other cavalry units. So they are much more mobile. And this is in general the variations to movements. So this really reflects more on one side, the general orders given on the morning of battle. On the other, it is more flexible. You have a balance. Some pieces are more rigid, some other pieces are more flexible. And the cavalry disengagement and also the cavalry interdiction really reflects a bit more how cavalry behaved on the battlefield, on the Napoleonic battlefield. So combat, of course, combat represents a key element of any war game and also of these variations as well. Here Professor Sabin's variations have been, I'd say, somewhat subtler, much more subtle, but they're really significant. They really had, even more than the first edition, a great tactical dimension to the overall experience. And I have to say that I really like the first edition variations, and also I like those second edition, and I understand why these further revisions to the previous variations have been made by Professor Sabin. But this part really convinces the most. Really, this is the part to which I agree more of all the second edition variations. So let's see them. First of all, the combat preconditions, they are almost identical. The only modification is that, well, this is a technicality that may happen or may not, but you can retreat into woods and road access from any side, but you can move or advance only through roads. So it is a bit more flexible. And this is very important. Artillery bombardment, that is ranged attacks from artillery. Well, artillery cannot make ranged attacks if they have like these an infantry unit. They cannot make a ranged attack, and they cannot make ranged attack Anglo-Allied and French artillery units on turn 6. Why? Because we have turns that are no longer 1 hour, but 1 hour and a half. Turn 6 now it is night, there is dusk, and so artillery bombardment is no longer feasible. If not for the Prussian artillery units, they can, because they have just arrived on the battlefield, so they have much more ammo, much more a better supply flow, so they can still conduct the bombardment even on that last time. And now we see the introduction of many small asymmetries between the armies, between the involved armies in the battle, that I really like. Now let's go to the other pages and let's see combat by itself, combat resolution. Here the most important variation is units that are defending buildings. First of all, as you remember, this detachment has 3 strength point as a combat value of 3 for all the battle. But even more, those units defending buildings are not doubled on defense. Infantry artillery units in X that are not Peplot or Laie or Frischemont, they're just small hamlets. That is, all units that are into fortified positions. Well, they increase the defense strength by 3 or by 5 if they are attacked by cavalry. And because you do not attack with cavalry against a fortified position, or if you do, well, you are in a very bad spot. That is, this is 3 plus 3, it is 6. So it is a very strong positions. Combat ratios have to be reduced at least 1 common if the attackers include both Prussian and Anglo-Allied units. Why? And this is one of the points that really convinces me. convinces me. There was no such coordination between the two armies, between the Anglo-Dutch and the Prussians. So when they attacked together, they were not coordinated, so they have a negative modifier. And to 3-1, reduce to 3-1 at the maximum or less if any defenders are shielded, that is, they are protected, or if any of the defenders and non-attackers are cavalry. And there is a combined arms element, or the die rolls increased to 1, increased by 1. That is worse, because in this game you have to roll smaller numbers to get better results. If any defenders are shielded, or if any attackers are Anglo-Allied infantry units, none of which are shielded. If unshielded Anglo-Allied units attack, well, they're not poised to attack. This is once again national doctrine, national military doctrine, so they are penalized. The roll is reduced by 1, that is better, if the attacker includes French cavalry. And no defenders receive the woods, roots, or building bonus. If you receive a cavalry charge in an unprotected X, you may go to square, but it is a bad thing. Of course, modifiers may cancel out each other. Other thing, the exchange results are converted into defender retreat results if all defenders are cavalry, or if all attackers are bombarding artillery, even if the defenders will be destroyed through inability to retreat. That is, cavalry will avoid the worst part of exchange results and will tend to disengage against the enemy infantry, artillery, or if it is just artillery attacking. The owner chooses which units to retreat first. So once again, a small tactical but very important tactical dimension. And important Prussian units may not displace Anglo-Allied ones, or vice versa. So Prussian units cannot move away to facilitate the retreat of Anglo-Allied units, and vice versa. Once again, there was no such coordination, and it is very, very important, especially in later stages of the game. Another interesting asymmetry, this was already present in the first edition of the variants, but here it is better explained. If the surviving victorious attackers include Anglo-Allied 3-5 or 4-5 cavalry, medium or heavy cavalry, Anglo-Allied, just Anglo-Allied, the strongest such unit must advance. Advance is mandatory into a vacated, not edition vacant X. The Scots Greys. If you remember, well, I remember that in Italian, I think that in English is the same. If you remember the famous line from the Waterloo movie, the British cavalry is the best cavalry in Europe, but the worst led. They have the worst leaders. British cavalry, the Scots Greys in particular, had this tendency towards carrying on their advance and being vulnerable to counterattacks, as happened at Waterloo. And the rules reflect that. I really like those rules about combat because they really introduce interesting asymmetries, national doctrine, and details, but they are very easy to implement, and they really have the tactical dimension. As once again, these are the parts that we will like the most about those variations. Alright, the last part of the variation regards reinforcements and of course victory conditions. Reinforcements, as we have seen, since the timetable is somewhat changed, we have the Prussian second corps that arrives on turn 4, so not all Prussian units arrive on turn 3. This is, by Professor Sabin, a better representation of the actual reinforcement arrival schedule during the day. And also, as we remember, Prussian artillery fires can bombard still on turn 6 because they have a better reinforcement role. They have more ammunition because they have arrived later during the day. But now let's get to the juicy part, the victory conditions. These are completely overruled. I have to resort to my notes because they are explained. They're somewhat a bit complicated as they are explained in Professor Sabin's file. I hope to have gotten that right, but I think that I have that right. Now, most of all, as in the first edition, there is no French escape from the map. There's just points. There's just points that are made up of losses and geographical conditions and the control of some key strategic positions. The points composition of points are composed, first of all, of course, the strength points of eliminated enemy units. Then we have a bonus of +6 to the allied if either the chasseur or the guard or the grenadier or the guard infantry units are eliminated, but it is a one-time only bonus. And then we have a +6 to allied if an allied unit occupies one of the axes of Plancenoit. But we have a +6 to the French if they occupy Huguemont and La Sainte, and both Huguemont and La Sainte, each of those axes are worth 6 points. Together they are worth 12 points. That is an enormous amount of points for the French. Now let's get to the victory conditions themselves. They have two types of victory conditions. The first one is Sacked victory, of course, that is victory conditions that are verified at the end of every combat phase, and once they are verified, the game ends immediately. Those conditions are: if the allies lose 40 or more strength points, it is a French tactical victory. If the French lose 40 or more strength points, it is an allied strategic victory. The allied can suffer more losses. The main goal is to make losses, impose losses to the French. If both armies at the end of that combat phase have surpassed the 40 points limit, well, it is an allied tactical victory. Sabin introduces another level of victory, and it is the French game victory if you are playing it competitively in a tournament or so, or switching sides. That is, if the Allies lost more than 30 points and the French lost less than 40, this is a French game victory. Imagine if the Allies have lost 35 points and the French have lost 38. Once this happens, well, it is a green French victory. You can apply these victory conditions or not. It depends on how competitive your play is. And then we have the other kind of victory condition, the end game victory condition. Those victory conditions are verified at the end of turn 6. That is, at the end of the game. And it is bad news for the French, because this means the French player has lost. The French player has to impose losses on the Allies before the end of turn 6. It is an allied victory. The only difference is if at the end of turn 6 the French have lost the same or more strength points than the Allied, then it is an allied strategic victory. If the French lost less casualties, less points than the Allies, it is still an allied tactical victory. It is an operational battle. And also here there is the competitive play that you may or may not apply during your play. If the Allies do not gain strategic victory, then it is a French game victory, that is a French moral victory somewhat. And those victory conditions reflect the fact that the Allies have to impose losses. They can accept more losses. Why? Because there is all the Prussian army coming here. So even if the Anglo-Allied army is essentially destroyed or scattered, well, we can imagine another day of battle with the rest of the Prussian army and against a heavily battered French army. However, in this case, this will be a French moral victory, somewhat, or I don't know, a draw. This is open to debate. But these victory conditions really change the outlook of the game and really transform this game into a purely, I will not say pure attritional battle, but they are mostly attritional battle. Now, about my conclusion, my impressions on the second edition of the variants by Professor Sabin. First of all, I want to thank Professor Sabin for having contacted me here on YouTube and also on Board Game Geek, informing me of his second edition of the variant rules. And this has been a great opportunity for me, because I didn't plan on doing 2 episodes on these variants, because I didn't know that there was a second edition of variant rules that was published just a few days before my video was published. But it is a really precious and outstanding opportunity to study the evolution of 2 sets of variant rules. The chronological order of the entire affair is that, of course, there was the original Napoleon at Waterloo game in 1971. Then a few years ago, Professor Sabin published the first set of variants to increase its historical accuracy without increasing its complexity. Then Professor Esdaile published another set of variations that were a bit more complicated. And so Professor Sabin read Esdaile's work and said, how can I achieve that level of historical accuracy, or even more, by my opinion, while still retaining the same simplicity, without increasing the complexity of the original game. And there we have the second edition of the variant rules. In all these, I could not miss the opportunity of studying this entire trend, this entire evolution. This debate between 2 great historians and academic professors. Fantastic, absolutely. It's been I consider that a privilege and a really great opportunity offered by new technologies, new media, new communication that put us all together into contact immediately. This was simply not possible, I think, even 10 years ago. But now let's get to those variations. In general, you have seen more limitations, there are more limits, there are more guidelines, especially for the French player. My beloved Papillot opening now is no longer possible. All those 4 axes are forbidden for the French, and you cannot enter in Papillot La Haye. Why? Because there are troops, so that is good. And this reminds me what happens on Herman Latzman Vive l'Empereur game. I have both editions of the game, where here we have a lot of terrain, lots of units, and so this is also it is not as easy a tactic as it was in the original Napoleon at Waterloo. It's interesting. I very probably will be making a video about Herman Latzman's Vive l'Empereur, that I consider the reference storyteller for Waterloo. I really like the system. But for now, let's just say that even this indirect representation really works here. Also, released units. I'm in general not a big fan of released units, of units that cannot move until turn X or turn Epsilon. Here they're very well calibrated, really like that, and this really gives me a lot of tension, because now when can I detach my Imperial Guard? The base principle at the base of all this is that, unlike what we see in very classical war games where we could change our idea and move units as we like, more or less as we liked every single turn, here you have an initial battle plan, initial general orders that have a lot of inertia. It takes time, it takes effort for an overall commander to change his own plans. You have to adapt, but it's not so easy. You have to send out orders, those orders have to be executed, the local commanders, local officers have to reorganize all their commands. So it is not so easy, and it's very well represented. You are not micromanaging everything. You have a set of guidelines and you have to abide by those guidelines, and you have to make the best out of your own initial dispositions. That's very interesting. I cannot shift my entire army because the Prussians are arriving here and find some gaming tactic to block them. No, I have this inertial movement on here. Now I have to somewhat change the tide, take a unit here or there, and try to stand back that tide, and then spend time into changing my entire balance, my entire army balance. This is perfectly represented here. I think, as I said in the Italian version of this video, I said it is more like playing a commands and cars Waterloo scenario, where you have your cards, and those cards say, okay, you have to attack 2 units on the right, 3 on the left, and blah blah blah, but with your hand of cards, but you are dealt with the original historical hand of cards that Wellington, Napoleon, and Blucher had. So you are playing a command and core in a way. On this level of command, you're playing a command and core game where you have the historical cards, card mix, historical card composition. So this really changes everything, because yes, inside that framework you may make your own individual decisions, but they are somewhat limited. You have not total freedom. This is very interesting. Of course, this means that you must have that attitude, you must like that aspect as a player for your gaming experience. It is up to you. I say, for me, it is very interesting, and also this for me demonstrates one thing. With this more limited, more regulated game flow, while still retains some freedom, the game is even simpler to manage also with the setup, because you know what to do. So even for beginner players, even with those variations, it's even more than the original Napoleon Waterloo game. This is a fantastic game for introducing someone to Waterloo in general, to wargaming, because one problem of first time players is that, oh, I have so many choices. They go into analysis paralysis. I don't know what to do. What should I do? They go into panic and they stop there. Here, everybody knows what to do. It is quite clear. You have freedom on doing what you know you should be doing. But by being more historical, because those guidelines are historical, the game becomes simpler, and in turn, this greater simplicity leads to a better historical game, a more plausible game, because you cannot do crazy stuff, okay, gaming stuff with units going freely everywhere. And it really comes into play into accord with Professor Sabin's work in simulating wars, where Sabin's theory was that simpler war games are actually better from an historical simulation point of view, at least. Okay, they have not so much detail, but better at conveying you the historical situation. They're better for historical studies. I really like that approach. And also another thing, that introductory war games. I always say that introductory war games. Well, there are no introductory war games, because even war games that are so simple can be transformed, can be commented, can be variated, and can become highly historical games. You just need to make some tweaks here and there, as Professor Sabin says, but there are no absolute introductory war games. War games are simple, they are simple, but after a couple of plays, you can toss them away and pass on to some more serious stuff. This is dead serious stuff. With these variants, Napoleon at Waterloo becomes a really great historical simulation of Waterloo, not just a good introductory war game. A great and detailed and plausible and valid simulation game. Of course, not the definitive game, not the reference game, because those things do not exist, but a very good war game and a very good historical simulation game. Now, it can still be considered introductory, because it teaches you the main principle of X and counter, while giving you precious guidelines to apply them. It is directly introductory, for example, to Herman Latzman's L'Empereur, that is a solitaire board game, because you play this, you know what to do, you don't have any problem, you understand the general flow of the battle, so you know what to do. Also in Herman Latzman's L'Empereur is more flexible, there are more things happening, but it is good. And it is a very good introduction to that system, and then on to more elaborated, more directly simulative games. But here, even the indirect simulation with all those small conditions and exceptions, the game works very well from a gaming point of view and also from an historical simulation point of view. And I really love that. I cannot say anything more about this. Okay, the detail, the tactical aspects, the cavalry, I really like how cavalry is represented. Artillery is somewhat limited, but I understand why it is limited. I really love, as I said, I really love the coordination duels, the failed coordination duels between Anglo-Allied units on one side, Anglo-Dutch units on one side, and Prussian units on the other. I really love that. And all those disengagements, those small movements here that, well, they really give the idea of good representation, good tactical level, even to such a simple game. I don't know if I have something more to say. Oh yeah, the only thing, less turns means less die rolls, and as we said, this means that every single die roll matters much more than the original game, so you have to carefully set up the conditions, and yes, there can be some randomness that has a much bigger impact. This is not so good, but it is unavoidable, and you really have to think to pre-plan every single attack, because if you fail an attack, a movement, or you make a wrong movement, or you make a mistake, you are going to pay that dearly. It is a very fine balanced scenario here. What can I say more? No, I don't know what to say. I really like that. I really like that experience. Once again, I want to thank Professor Sabin, even for pointing out some mistakes I made in my first video. I hope probably I made new mistakes in this second video, but it happens. A very good presentation of the rules. So the second variant with the red highlights. Only just the victory conditions I had to make one a small scheme of rules. Probably it is a language thing, because probably it is more difficult for me. Sorry, I have my small cat, okay, that wants to play Waterloo with me, and we are actually tossing our her toys around. Probably she wants to play Waterloo with me, and I will probably do. And after that, no, okay, this Ewin, she's called, and now after that, okay, fantastic experience. It has been really great to study the evolution of those two variants of duels, and also this debate. It is this really fantastic. It really shows even how simple war games, even more simple war games, especially simple war games, are capable of producing great historical results if they are managed and if they are created by fantastic designers such as Jim Dunnigan and on one side, and then they are modified by great historians like Professor Sabin, and even by Professor Esdaile, that has his own sets of variations that I really want to try someday. Maybe we make a third episode of the series. Why not? After that, great opportunity. Try that. Everybody has a Napoleon or Waterloo line somewhere. This can be made in print or play. Fantastic, and you can play that with the variants even if you are a first-time wargamer, or to introduce someone to wargames. This is very good. It's even better for first-time wargamers. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. Have a happy new year, because this is the first video of the year, and a new year. Also, we will speak about all this stuff in two places. First, my next book that is coming in 2024 in English language. I will give you more information as soon as I have it, also from the publisher. This book will be about historical studies, historiography, applied war games and how war games can become applied historiography, but also doing the virtual Ludostoria, virtual Ludostoricon 2024. Ludostoria is an Italian Facebook group dedicated to all forms of historical gaming, RPGs, war games, Euro games, and book games. Every single way of playing with history. We will have events, we will have international guests, the convention will have, of course, plays and demos, etc. The convention will be made in Italian, of course. It will be made on our Discord server. You can have given links everywhere on the channel, or you can go to the Ludostoria Facebook group to have all information. International guests and visitors are more than welcome. We will also have international guests, and yeah, you will get more information in the next week. The virtual Ludostoricon will be held on January 21st on the Ludostoria Discord server. I will put the link here in the description. Okay, and we will speak about these topics, of course, with historians, with game designers, with publishers, and so on. So, thank you very much. Thank you for having been here, stayed with me, and bye bye. Have a happy new year, have a great new gaming year, gaming 2024. And as always, remember, don't be scared. It's just war games. Ciao.